Captain Sarah Chun stood on the bridge of the U.S. Prometheus and looked out at the mess floating in space around them. Broken pieces of ships drifted past the windows like metal snow. Some pieces came from human ships. Some came from the alien. Ships that had attacked them 3 days ago. All of it was twisted and burned and dead now. Sarah's uniform was torn in several places. Dark stains covered the blue fabric. Some of the stains were her blood. Some belonged to her crew members who had died during the battle. She had not changed clothes since the fighting ended 12 hours ago. There had been too much work to do. The Prometheus looked almost as bad as the debris around it. Long black marks ran across its white hull where alien weapons had tried to. Burned through the armor. Deep cuts showed where energy beams had sliced into the metal. One whole section near the back of the ship was completely gone. It had been blown away during the second day of fighting, but the ship was still alive. The engines still worked. The weapons still fired. Most importantly, the Prometheus had won. Sarah turned to look at the planet below them. New Kepler colony. Spread across 3 continents of the world they had come to protect, or what was left of it. The colony had taken heavy damage during the 3 days of fighting. Whole city blocks were now just piles of broken concrete and twisted metal. The clear domes that covered each city to keep the air in had cracks running through them like spider webs. Some domes had failed completely and were being fixed by emergency repair crews. Working in spacesuits, red lights blinked all across the planet's surface. Each light marked a place where people needed help, where buildings had fallen down, where fires still burned, where the wounded waited for medical teams to reach them. Sarah had counted more than 10,000 emergency signals when the battle first ended. The number was going down slowly as rescue teams did their work. Lieutenant Commander Torres walked up beside her. His left arm was in a white sling, and bandages covered half his face. Like everyone else on the bridge, he looked tired, and hurt and ready to fall down, but he was still standing, still working, still fighting even though the battle was over. "Captain, we just got the final damage report from the colony," Torres said. His voice was rough from breathing too much smoke during the battle. 20,000 people are dead. Maybe more. They're still digging through the rubble in Sector 7. Sarah closed her eyes for a moment. 20,000 people. That was more than the entire crew of the Prometheus. All those people had been counting on her ship to protect them. She had done her best, but it had not been enough to save them all. "What about the orbital stations?" she asked. "Gone. All of them." Torres looked down at his tablet. The manufacturing platforms, the mining stations, the defense satellites. The aliens destroyed everything in orbit except us. Sarah nodded. She had watched those stations die during the first day of fighting. The alien ships had swept through the orbital facilities like a storm through a wheat field. The human defenders had fought back with everything they had, but their weapons were too weak, and their ships were too few. That was when the Prometheus had stepped in. The big battleship was different from every other human warship ever built. It was bigger, stronger, and carried weapons that most people thought were impossible to make. The ship was so new that this battle had been its first real test. Sarah had not been sure it would work when the fighting started. Now she knew it. Worked very well indeed. "How many alien ships did we destroy?" Sarah asked. Torres smiled for the first time in days. 47 confirmed kills, Captain. Maybe more. It's hard to count all the pieces floating out there. Sarah looked back out at the debris field. Somewhere in all that wreckage were the remains of an alien fleet that had come to wipe out New Kepler colony. The aliens had brought 53 ships to the battle. They had expected an easy victory against what they thought was a weak human. Settlement defended by outdated weapons. Instead, they had found the Prometheus waiting for them. The battleship had fought like nothing the aliens had ever seen before. Its weapons could punch through alien shields that had stopped human attacks for years. Its armor could take hits that would have destroyed any other human ship. Most importantly, the Prometheus could learn and adapt during battle in ways that confused and frightened the alien commanders. By the end of the third day, only 6 alien ships were left alive. They had run away as fast as their engines could carry them. "Captain," another voice called from across the bridge. Ensign Park was still at her communication station, even though she should have been in the medical bay, getting treatment for the burns on her hands. "We're getting a transmission from Governor Vasquez on the planet." "Put her through," Sarah said. The main screen lit up with the image of a woman in her 50s. Governor Elena Vasquez looked almost as tired and beaten up as Sarah felt. Her gray hair was messy and her clothes were dirty. Behind her, Sarah could see the emergency command center that had been set up in one of the few government buildings still standing. "Captain Chun," the governor said, "I wanted to thank you personally. Without the Prometheus, we would all be dead right now." "We did what we came here to do, Governor," Sarah replied. "How are the rescue operations going?" "Slowly. We lost most of our heavy equipment when the aliens bombed the industrial sector. But we're making progress. The important thing is that we're still here, still alive, still human." Sarah understood what the governor meant. For 3 years, the aliens had been spreading across this part of the galaxy like a disease. They destroyed every human colony they found. They took no prisoners. They left no survivors. World after world had gone silent as the alien fleets moved through human space. New Kepler was supposed to be next. The aliens had come expecting another easy victory. Instead, they had gotten their first real defeat. "Governor, you need to start evacuating the colony," Sarah said. "The aliens will be back. Probably with more ships this time." "I know, but where can we go? Every other human world is either too far away or already under attack." Sarah had been thinking about the same problem. The Prometheus could protect New Kepler from one alien fleet, but not from the entire alien empire. The ship was powerful, but it was still just one ship. "We'll figure something out," Sarah said. "The important thing is that we prove something. Here, we prove that humans can fight back. We can win." Governor Vasquez smiled. It was a tired smile, but it was real. "Yes, we did. Thank you, Captain, for everything." The transmission ended, and the bridge fell quiet again. Sarah looked around at her crew. These people had fought for 3 days without rest. They had seen friends die and watched their ship get torn apart around them. But they had never given up. They had never stopped fighting. That was what made humans different from the aliens, Sarah thought. The aliens were stronger and had better technology. But humans would never stop fighting, no matter how bad things got. They would find a way to win, even when winning seemed impossible. The Prometheus drifted through the debris field. It's damaged, hull catching the light from New Kepler's sun. The ship looked broken and beaten, but it was still alive, still dangerous, still ready to fight, just like the humans inside it. Dr. Marcus Webb walked through the dark corridors of the U-East Prometheus with a heavy heart. His white lab coat was dirty and torn. His hands were black with grease and soot from working on the damaged systems for the past 12 hours. Every step he took made his tired legs ache, but he could not stop. Not yet. The ship's interior looked like a war zone. Broken pipes leaked steam into the hallways. Sparks flew from damaged electrical panels. Emergency lights cast red shadows on the walls where the normal lighting had failed. The air smelled of burned metal and something else that Marcus tried not to think about. Marcus was the chief engineer of the Prometheus. He was also the man who had designed many of the ship's most important systems. The weapons that could punch through alien shields. the armor that could heal itself when damaged, the engines that could make the big ship move like a fighter. All of these things had come from Marcus's mind and hands. 3 days ago, he had been proud of his work. Now he wondered if it had been worth the cost. He stopped at a sealed door marked with danger signs. Behind this door was the ship's main engineering section. This was where the real heart of the Prometheus lived. Marcus put his hand on the scanner and waited for the heavy door to slide open. The engineering bay was a mess. Half of the machines were broken or shut down. Thick cables hung from the ceiling like dead snakes. The main reactor in the center of the room was still working, but barely. Its blue glow was much dimmer than it should have been. 20 people had worked in this room when the battle started. Now only 8 were left. The others were dead or too badly hurt to work. Marcus had watched some of them die with his own eyes. Good people, smart people, his friends. Chief Petty Officer Kim looked up from a damaged control panel as Marcus walked in. Her face was pale, and she had bandages wrapped around her right hand. But she was still working, just like everyone else. Who could still stand? "Doctor, the quantum cascade reactors are in bad shape," Kim said. "We pushed them way past their safety limits during the battle. I'm not sure how much longer they'll hold together." Marcus walked over to examine the reactor display. The numbers on the screen made him feel sick. The reactors had produced more power during the battle than he had thought was possible. They had given the Prometheus the energy it needed to keep fighting when any other ship would have been dead. But that extra power had come at a terrible price. "How long before they fail completely?" Marcus asked. "Maybe 6 hours. Maybe less." Kim shook her head. "I've never seen readings like this. The reactor cores are starting to crack. If they break apart, ... double quotes, she did not need to finish. If the reactors failed, the Prometheus would lose power. No power meant no weapons, no shields, no life support. The ship would become a floating tomb. Marcus looked at the other displays around. The room, the adaptive armor system, was also in trouble. During the battle, the armor had been able to fix itself when alien weapons damaged it. The self-repair systems had worked perfectly, sealing holes and replacing broken sections almost as fast as the aliens could make new ones. But the armor had its limits too. It could only repair itself so many times before the repair systems wore out. According to the readings, those systems were almost dead now. The next time something hit the ship's hull, it would stay broken. What about the weapons? Marcus asked Petty. Officer Chun looked up from another control station. He was very young, probably not even 20 years old. This had been his first real battle. "The main guns are offline. The targeting computers were fried when that alien cruiser got too close. The missile tubes are jammed. We've got maybe 30% of our firepower left," Marcus nodded. It was what he had expected to hear, but it still hurt. The Prometheus had fought like a demon during the battle, but even demons could be hurt. He walked over to a wall panel and called up the ship's damage report on the main screen. Red warning lights covered the display like a rash. Critical systems failing. Hull breaches sealed but not repaired. Power levels dropping. The list went on and on. "Sir," Kim said quietly, "the crew is asking questions. They want to know if we're going to make it." Marcus looked around at the faces in the engineering bay. These people had worked miracles during the battle. They had kept the ship running when it should have been destroyed. They had pushed every system beyond its breaking point and somehow made it all work. Now they were scared. Not of dying, Marcus. Realized they had already faced death and won. They were scared that their ship might fail them when the aliens came back. "We'll make it," Marcus said. He was not sure if he believed it, but his crew needed to hear it. "We've come this far. We're not going to give up now." Far below them on New Kepler's surface, Governor Elena Vasquez was dealing with her own problems. She stood in what used to be the colony's main hospital, looking at row after row of injured people lying on makeshift beds. The real hospital had been destroyed on the first day of the alien attack. Now they were using schools, warehouses, and any other building that still had a roof. The numbers were getting worse every hour. 20,000 dead, as Torres had reported to Captain Shun. But that was just the beginning. Another 15,000 were wounded, some very badly. Many of them would not survive without better medical care than the colony could provide. Dr. Sarah Martinez, the colony's chief medical officer, walked up to Elena with a tired expression. Her medical scrubs were stained with blood, and her hands shook from exhaustion. She had been working without rest since the attack began. "Governor, we need to talk," Dr. Martinez said. "We're running out of medical supplies. Bandages, painkillers, antibiotics. Everything. The supply warehouses were hit during the bombing." Elena looked out at all the wounded people. Men, women, children, families torn apart by the alien attack. People who had come to New Kepler to build a better life, and instead found only death and destruction. "What do you need?" Elena asked. "Everything. But most importantly, we need to get the worst cases off planet. There are about 200 people who won't live without major surgery. We can't do that kind of work here anymore." Elena knew what the doctor was asking. The colony's medical facilities were destroyed. The orbital hospitals were gone. The only way to save those people was to send them to another world. But the nearest human world was weeks away, and there was no guarantee that any ship trying to leave the system would make it past alien patrols. "I'll talk to Captain Shun," Elena said. "Maybe the Prometheus can help." Dr. Martinez nodded and walked away to check on more patients. Elena stayed where she was, looking out at the wounded. These people were counting on her to keep them safe. She had failed them once already. She could not fail them again. Outside the makeshift hospital, the work of rebuilding continued. Construction crews worked around the clock to repair the damaged city domes. Without those domes, the cities would lose their atmosphere, and everyone inside would die. The crews worked in dangerous conditions, knowing that one mistake could kill thousands of people. In the farming areas outside the cities, other teams worked to save what they could of the colony's food production. The aliens had targeted the agricultural zones during their attack, destroying crops and poisoning water supplies. New Kepler had always grown most of its own food. Now the colonists faced the possibility of starvation in the coming months. Elena walked through the hospital and out into the street. The sky above was still filled with smoke from the fires that continued to burn in the industrial sector. Emergency. Vehicles rushed past, carrying more wounded to the overcrowded medical centers. But people were also working, cleaning up debris, fixing broken buildings, helping their neighbors. The alien attack had hurt the colony badly, but it had not broken the spirit of the people who lived there. Elena pulled out her communication device and contacted the Prometheus. Captain Shun's face appeared on the small screen. "Governor," the captain said, "how can we help?" "Captain, we need to evacuate our most seriously wounded. About 200 people who won't survive without better medical care. Can your ship take them?" Captain Shun was quiet for a moment. Elena could see her thinking about the problems. The Prometheus was badly damaged. It might not be safe to carry civilians. And if they left New Kepler, who would protect the colony? If the aliens came back? "We'll make room," Captain Shun said finally. "Send them up as soon as you can. But Governor, you should know that my ship might not survive another battle. If the aliens come back in force." "I understand, Captain. But these people will die for certain if we don't try." Elena ended the call and looked up at the sky. Somewhere up there, The broken but still dangerous Prometheus waited to carry the wounded to safety. It was not much hope, but it was the only hope they had. The battle was over, but the real fight for survival was just beginning. War Prince Kethver stood in the command center of his flagship and stared at the battle recordings with growing anger and confusion. His tall, gray-skinned form moved with the deadly grace that all members of the hegemony military were trained to display. But inside, he felt something he had not experienced in many years of conquest. He felt afraid. The holographic display showed the battle at New Kepler Colony from beginning to end. Kethver had watched it 17 times already, but he still could not understand what had happened. His fleet should have won easily. The humans were weak. Their technology was primitive. Their weapons could barely scratch hegemony armor. That was what all the intelligence reports had said. That was what every previous battle had proven. Human colonies fell quickly when the hegemony arrived, usually within a few hours. Sometimes, the humans did not even fight back, but this time had been different. This time, the humans had fought back with a ship that should not have existed. "Show me the human battleship again," Kethver ordered. The hologram changed to focus on the UES Prometheus. Even now, looking at the recordings, Kethver found it hard to believe what he was seeing. The ship was large, but not the largest he had ever fought. Its design looked crude compared to hegemony vessels. Yet somehow, this one human ship had destroyed most of his fleet. Intelligence. Officer Vashti approached the war prince with careful steps. Her 4 arms held data tablets containing the preliminary analysis of the battle. Like all members of her species, she was small and quick, with large eyes that could see details others might miss. "War Prince," she said in a voice like broken glass, "the analysis is complete. The human ship used weapons and tactics we have never encountered before." Kethver turned to look at her. His red eyes burned with barely controlled rage. "Explain." Vashti activated one of her tablets, and a new hologram appeared. It showed the Prometheus firing its main weapons at a hegemony cruiser. The energy beams looked normal at first, but as they hit the cruiser's shields, something strange happened. "Watch carefully, War Prince. The human weapons start with a standard energy signature, but as they impact our shields, they change. The frequency shifts to match the exact resonance needed to penetrate our defensive systems." Kethver watched the recording more closely. She was right. The human weapons were adapting in real time, learning how to break through hegemony shields that had protected their ships for thousands of years. "That should be impossible," Kethver said. "Our shield technology is far beyond anything the humans possess." "Yes, War Prince. But somehow they found a way to make it work." Vashti switched to another recording. "And that is not the only surprise they had for us." The new hologram showed the Prometheus taking heavy damage from multiple hegemony ships. Kethver remembered this part of the battle well. His ships had finally managed to surround the human battleship and were pouring fire into it from all directions. The human ship should have been destroyed within minutes. Instead, something incredible happened. The damaged sections of the ship's hull began to repair themselves. Holes sealed over. Burned armor plates were replaced by new ones that seemed to grow out of the ship's structure. Within minutes, the Prometheus looked almost undamaged again. Self-repairing. "Armor," Vashti said. "We have theoretical designs for such systems, but we have never been able to make them work on this scale. The humans have somehow solved problems that our best engineers have struggled with for centuries." Kethver felt his anger growing. The hegemony had conquered half the galaxy with their superior technology. They had destroyed hundreds of species that could not match their weapons and defenses. But these primitive humans had somehow created technology that surpassed even hegemony science. "Show me the tactical analysis," Kethver ordered. The hologram changed again to show the overall pattern of the battle. Colored lines showed the movement of ships on both sides. Kethver had used standard hegemony tactics, the same ones that had brought victory in thousands of previous battles. The humans had done something completely different. The human ship ignored all established rules of space combat, Vashishti explained. When we moved to surround them, they charged directly into the center of our formation. When we tried to use our superior numbers, they concentrated all their firepower on single targets instead of spreading their attacks. When we expected them to retreat, they advanced. Kethver studied the tactical display with the eye of an experienced military commander. What the humans had done looked like madness. Their tactics violated every principle of space warfare that had been developed over thousands of years. Ships were supposed to maintain safe distances. They were supposed to work together in coordinated groups. They were supposed to retreat when facing superior numbers. But somehow, the human madness had worked. They sacrificed 3 of their escort ships to protect the main battleship, Vashti continued. The escorts rammed our cruisers directly, destroying themselves, but taking our ships with them. No civilized species fights like that. Kethver had seen the ramming attacks during the battle. They had shocked him then, and they still shocked him now. The human escort ships had been much smaller than the hegemony cruisers they attacked. The humans must have known they would be destroyed. But they had done it anyway, trading their lives to give their battleship a better chance to fight. It was wasteful. It was primitive. It was completely insane. It was also terrifyingly effective. What about their defensive tactics? Kethver asked. Also unprecedented, War Prince. When we tried to disable their engines, they used their own weapon fire to create debris fields that blocked our targeting systems. When we attempted to board their ship, they vented atmosphere from entire sections to prevent our troops from advancing. They seemed willing to damage their own vessel if it meant stopping our attacks. Kethver closed his eyes and tried to understand what kind of enemy they were really facing. The hegemony had fought many species over the centuries. Some were stronger, some were smarter, some had better technology. But all of them had followed the same basic patterns of warfare. All of them had been predictable. These humans were something different. They fought like they had nothing to lose and everything to gain. They took risks that no sane military commander would ever consider. They sacrificed themselves without hesitation if it helped their cause. And somehow it worked. War Prince. Another voice called from across the command center. Communications Officer Vekilon approached with his usual nervous manner. His species was known for being excellent at gathering and analyzing information, but they were also known for being cowards. "What is it?" Kethver demanded. "We are receiving transmissions from the surviving ships of the fleet. They are requesting permission to return to base for repairs and reinforcement." Kethver looked around the command center at his remaining officers. 6 ships. That was all that was left of the 53 vessels he had brought to New Kepler. The humans had destroyed or crippled 47 hegemony warships with a single battleship and a handful of escorts. It was the worst defeat in hegemony history. "Send the recall order," Kethver said finally. "All ships are to return to base immediately." "Yes, War Prince. And your report to High Command?" Kethver thought about what he would tell his superiors. How could he explain that a primitive human colony had defeated one of the hegemony's most powerful fleets? How could he make them understand that everything they thought they knew about human military capabilities was wrong? "Tell High Command that we need to revise all our intelligence about human defensive capabilities," Kethver said slowly. "Tell them that the humans have developed new technologies that we do not understand. Tell them that they fight with a ... determination ... that we have not encountered before." "Should I recommend sending a larger fleet to finish the job?" Vekilon asked. Kethvar was quiet for a long moment. A larger fleet would certainly be able to destroy New Kepler colony. But at what cost? If one human battleship could destroy most of his fleet, what would happen when the humans built more ships like it? No, Kethver said finally. Tell High Command that we need to study this defeat carefully before we take any further action. The humans are not what we expected them to be. As his flagship jumped into hyperspace, carrying the survivors of his fleet away from New Kepler, Kethver continued to study the battle recordings. Somewhere in those images was the key to understanding how the humans had won. And more importantly, how the hegemony could make sure it never happened again. But as he watched the human ship fight with desperate courage against impossible odds, Kethver began to suspect that defeating these humans was going to be much harder than anyone in the hegemony had imagined. The humans had shown something that day at New Kepler. They had shown that they would never give up, never surrender, never accept defeat, no matter how hopeless their situation seemed. That kind of enemy was the most dangerous kind of all. Captain Sarah Chun walked through the most secret part of the U.E.'s Prometheus. This section of the ship was hidden deep in its center, protected by layers of armor and security systems. Only a few people on the entire ship knew what was kept here. Even fewer understood how it really worked. The corridor was clean and bright, very different from the damaged areas she had been walking through for the past day. Here, the walls were smooth white metal that seemed to glow with its own light. The air hummed with barely contained energy that made the hair on Sarah's arms stand up. At the end of the corridor was a heavy door marked with warning signs in 6 different languages. The door was made of materials that did not exist anywhere else in human space. Materials that had been taken from wrecked alien ships and studied by Earth's best scientists for over 5 years. Sarah placed her hand on the scanner beside the door. A beam of light passed over her eyes, checking her identity. Only 3 people in the entire human fleet were allowed into this room. Sarah was one of them. The door slid open with a soft whisper. Inside was a laboratory unlike anything most humans had ever seen. Strange machines lined the walls, their surfaces covered with symbols and controls that looked almost alive. In the center of the room stood a tall cylinder filled with swirling blue energy. This was the heart of everything that made the Prometheus. Special Dr. Marcus Webb was already in the laboratory, standing in front of a large display screen that showed numbers and diagrams that hurt to look at. He turned when Sarah entered, his face showing the exhaustion they all felt. "Captain," he said, "I think I finally understand what happened during the battle." Sarah walked over to stand beside him. The display showed a 3-dimensional model of the Prometheus, but it looked different somehow. Lines of energy flowed through the ship like blood through veins. Strange patterns pulsed and shifted in ways that seemed almost alive. "The ship performed beyond all our calculations," Marcus continued. "The quantum cascade reactors produced 30% more power than should have been possible. The adaptive armor repaired damage faster than we ever achieved in testing. The weapons adapted to alien defenses in real time without any input from us." Sarah looked at the energy patterns on the screen. During the battle, she had felt like the ship was alive somehow, like it was fighting alongside her crew instead of just being a tool they used. She had thought it was just her imagination brought on by stress and fear. Now she was not so sure. "Marcus, what exactly did we build here?" she asked. Marcus was quiet for a moment. He touched a control panel, and the display changed to show the history of the Prometheus project. Images flashed by showing the recovery of alien technology from battlefields across human space. Scientists studying broken alien weapons. Engineers trying to understand how alien armor worked. 5 years ago, we found the wreckage of an alien research vessel, Marcus said. It had been destroyed in a battle with one of our patrol ships, but some of its equipment was still intact. Inside, we found technology that was centuries ahead of anything we had. Sarah remembered the reports. The discovery had been classified. At the highest levels, only a handful of people in the human government even knew it had happened. We spent 3 years just trying to understand what we had found, Marcus continued. The alien technology was not just advanced. It was completely different from anything humans had ever built. Instead of following fixed programming like our computers, it could learn and adapt on its own. The display showed more images now. Human scientists working with alien devices. Test after test as they tried to understand how the technology worked. Most of the tests had failed. Some had been dangerous. A few had been deadly. We never figured out how to copy the alien technology exactly, Marcus said. But we learned how to combine it with human engineering in ways that created something new. Something that was part human and part alien, but also something more. Sarah looked around the laboratory with new understanding. The strange machines were not just advanced human technology. They were hybrid devices that combined human engineering with alien science in ways that neither species had ever imagined. The Prometheus is not just a battleship, she said slowly. It is something else entirely. Yes, the ship has a kind of artificial intelligence that can learn and grow. During the battle, it was not just following our orders. It was thinking for itself, finding new ways to fight that we never programmed into it. Sarah felt a chill run down her spine. The idea of a ship that could think for itself was both exciting and terrifying. What if it decided that humans were the enemy? What if it chose to stop following orders? Marcus seemed to read her thoughts. The ship is loyal to us, Captain. The alien technology we used includes something like emotions or instincts. It wants to protect human life. It sees the crew as part of itself, like family. On the main screen, the energy patterns shifted and changed. For just a moment, Sarah thought she saw something that looked almost like a face in the swirling lights. Then it was gone, leaving her wondering if she had imagined it. Commander Jake Torres entered the laboratory at that moment, carrying a data tablet and looking worried. His injured arm was still in a sling, but he was moving better than he had been earlier. Captain, I have the preliminary battle analysis you requested, he said. Then he stopped and looked around the laboratory with wide eyes. What is this place? Classified, Sarah said quickly. What does your analysis show? Torres shook his head as if to clear it and focused on his tablet. The hegemony forces retreated, but this was clearly just a scouting mission. They came here to test our defenses and gather information about our capabilities. Sarah nodded. She had suspected as much. The alien attack had been too organized and too careful to be a simple raid. They had been studying human responses, learning how their enemies fought. What kind of information did they gather? She asked. Everything. They recorded our weapons signatures, our ship movements, our tactics. They know exactly how strong our defenses are now. More importantly, they know that we have technology they were not expecting. Torres touched his tablet and brought up a tactical display. It showed the positions of all known hegemony fleets in this part of the galaxy. The closest ones were marked in red. Intelligence estimates that they will return within 4 to 6 weeks, Torres continued. And when they come back, they will bring everything they have, maybe 200 ships or more. Sarah looked at the display and felt her heart sink. The Prometheus had barely survived fighting 50 alien ships. 200 would be impossible, even with the ship's advanced technology. What about reinforcements? She asked. Are there other human fleets that can help us? Torres's expression grew even more grim. The nearest human battle group is 3 weeks away, and it only has 12 ships, all of them using standard technology. They would not last 5 minutes. Against a full hegemony assault, Sarah turned to Marcus. Can we build more ships like the Prometheus? Not in time, Marcus replied. The hybrid technology is incredibly complex. It took us 5 years to build this one ship. We would need at least 2 years to complete another one, and that is if everything went perfectly. The three of them stood in the strange laboratory, surrounded by the humming alien human technology that had saved New Kepler Colony. But all of them knew that one ship, no matter how advanced, could not protect humanity from the storm that was coming. There has to be something we can do, Sarah said finally. We proved that humans can fight back. We cannot just give up now. Marcus looked thoughtful. There might be a way. The technology in this ship, the hybrid systems, they could be adapted for other purposes. We could modify existing human ships, upgrade their weapons and defenses with simplified versions of what we have here. How long would that take? Torres asked. Weeks, not years. The upgrades would not be as advanced as what the Prometheus has, but they would be much better than standard human technology. A fleet of upgraded ships might be able to stand against the hegemony. Sarah felt a spark of hope. It was not much, but it was better than nothing. What would you need? Time, resources, and access to every shipyard in human space, Marcus replied. And we would need to share the classified technology with other engineers. The secret would not stay secret much longer. Sarah thought about the political implications. The Prometheus project had been hidden from most of the human government because of fears about what might happen if the technology fell into the wrong hands. But now, with the hegemony preparing for a massive assault, those fears seemed less important. I will contact Earth Command, she said. They need to know what we learned here and what we are facing. Torres looked at his tablet again. Captain, there is something else. We intercepted some of the hegemony communications during their retreat. Our translation computers are still working on most of it, but we did understand one part. What did they say? They were surprised, Captain. Really surprised. They called us something that translates roughly as the species that will not die. They seemed almost afraid of us. Sarah smiled for the first time in days. Fear was a weapon that humans had never been able to use against the hegemony before. The aliens had always been so much stronger and more advanced that they saw humans as nothing more than annoying insects. 3 weeks had passed since the battle that changed everything. The U.E.'s Prometheus hung in New Kepler's orbital shipyard like a giant metal whale being slowly brought back to life. Repair crews swarmed over its hull, welding new armor plates and replacing damaged weapon systems. The ship looked better than it had since the battle, but everyone knew it was still not at full strength. Captain Sarah Chun stood on the observation deck of the shipyard's main station, watching the work continue below. The Prometheus was no longer the only warship in the system. 12 other vessels floated nearby, all of them being modified with technology taken from the prototype battleship. The ships were not as advanced as the Prometheus itself. They could not heal their own damage or adapt their weapons during battle, but they were much stronger than they had been before. Their shields could now stop weapons that would have cut through standard human armor. Their guns could punch holes. In alien ships that had once seemed invincible, it was not enough, but it was a start. Captain Chun, a voice called from behind her. She turned to see Admiral Rebecca Harrison approaching with quick, confident steps. The Admiral had arrived week ago with the first wave of reinforcements. She was a small woman with gray hair and sharp eyes that missed nothing. Admiral, Sarah said, saluting. How are the upgrades proceeding? Faster than I hoped, but slower than we need, Admiral Harrison replied. She moved to stand beside Sarah at the observation window. Dr. Webb's team has worked miracles in the past week. They have managed to install simplified versions of your hybrid technology on 8 ships so far. Sarah looked down at the vessels being modified. The work was dangerous and complicated. 3 engineers had been killed when one of the alien human power systems had overloaded during installation. But the teams kept working, knowing that every upgraded ship might make the difference between victory and defeat. What about the other human fleets? Sarah asked. Are they sending more ships? Admiral Harrison's expression grew dark. That is what I came to talk to you about. We received word from Earth Command this morning. The hegemony is not just preparing to attack New Kepler. They are moving against human space on all fronts. Sarah felt her stomach drop. How many systems are under attack? 17 so far, and more every day. The aliens are using what they learned here to hit our weakest colonies first, places that do not have strong defenses or large populations. The Admiral activated a holographic display that showed the current situation across human space. Red marks indicated systems under attack or already fallen. Yellow marks showed systems preparing for assault. The amount of red on the map was terrifying. They are trying to destroy our ability to help each other, Admiral Harrison continued. If they can capture or destroy enough colonies, they can isolate the remaining human worlds and pick them off one by one. Sarah studied the display with growing horror. The hegemony was not just planning to finish what they had started at New Kepler. They were planning to end humanity's presence in space completely. How long do we have? She asked. Our long range. Sensors detected gravitational disturbances at the edge of the system yesterday. Multiple large fleets moving in hyperspace. Intelligence estimates they will arrive within 48 hours. Sarah looked back down at the Prometheus. The ship was stronger now than it had been during the first battle, but it was still not fully repaired. And even with the upgraded escort vessels, they would be facing odds that made their first victory seem like a miracle. How many ships are they bringing? Sarah asked, though she was not sure she wanted to know the answer. At least 200, possibly more. Admiral Harrison's voice was steady, but Sarah could hear the worry underneath. They are not taking any chances this time. The 2 women stood in silence for a moment, watching the repair crews work on the ships below. Everyone in the shipyard knew what was coming. They had all seen the intelligence reports, but no one had stopped working. If anything, they were working harder and faster than before. There is something else, Admiral Harrison said finally. Something you need to know before the battle begins. Sarah turned to look at her. What is it? Earth Command has authorized the use of Protocol 7. Sarah felt the blood drain from her face. Protocol 7 was humanity's last resort plan, something that had been developed in secret years ago when the war with the hegemony first began. It was a plan that no one ever wanted to use. Are you sure? Sarah asked. The authorization came directly from the president. If we cannot stop the hegemony here, if New Kepler falls, then we implement Protocol 7 immediately. Protocol 7 meant the complete evacuation of human space. Every colony, every station, every outpost would be abandoned. The entire human race would retreat to Earth and the oldest inner colonies. Giving up everything they had built among the stars. It was surrender. Not immediate surrender, but the beginning of the end. We cannot let that happen, Sarah said firmly. No, we cannot. Admiral Harrison looked out at the Prometheus again. That ship of yours proved that humans can fight back and win. Now we need to prove that we can do it again. Down in the Prometheus's main laboratory, Dr. Marcus Webb was working on the most important project of his life. The hybrid alien-human technology that powered the ship had given him an idea. A dangerous idea that might change the course of the entire war. He stood in front of the main control panel, his hands moving over alien symbols that he was only beginning to understand. The technology wanted to learn and grow. During the battle, it had adapted to threats in ways that surprised even him. Now he was trying to teach it something new. Computer, Analyze hegemony fleet compositions from all recorded engagements, he said to the ship's artificial intelligence. Analysis complete, the ship replied in a voice that sounded almost human. Hegemony fleets follow predictable tactical patterns based on ship class and mission parameters. Marcus smiled. The ship's intelligence had grown significantly since the battle. It was learning not just from its own experiences, but from all the data in human military databases. Can you predict their attack strategy for the incoming fleet? Probability matrices indicate a 73% chance they will use a standard encirclement pattern, attempting to overwhelm defenses through superior numbers while preventing retreat. And can you design countermeasures? There was a pause. Marcus could almost feel the ship thinking, processing possibilities that no human mind could consider. Affirmative. However, success probability is low with current force levels. Recommendation: implement adaptive network protocol. Marcus's eyes widened. The adaptive network protocol was something he had only theorized about. The idea that multiple ships with hybrid technology could link their systems together, sharing information and coordinating their actions in real time. Can the upgraded ships handle network integration? Limited integration possible. Efficiency reduced, but tactically viable. Marcus felt excitement building in his chest. If the ship was right, if they could link all the upgraded vessels together into a single coordinated network, they might have a chance against the massive hegemony fleet. He activated his communicator. Captain Shun, please report to the main laboratory immediately. I think I have found a way for us to win. On the planet's surface, Governor Elena Vasquez stood in the rebuilt emergency command center and watched the evacuation. Ships loading with civilians. Women, children, elderly colonists, anyone who could not fight was being sent to safer worlds deeper in human space. The evacuation was voluntary, but most families with children had chosen to leave. They knew what was coming. They knew that this time there might not be a miracle to save them, but many colonists had chosen to stay. Farmers who refused to abandon their crops, engineers who wanted to help with the ship repairs, ordinary people who had decided that they would rather fight than run. Elena understood their choice. New Kepler was their home. They had built lives here, raised families here, invested their hopes and dreams in this world. The hegemony could destroy their cities and kill their people, but they could not take away the human spirit that had created this place. Governor, her aide said, approaching with a communication tablet. We just received word from the orbital shipyard. Dr. Webb thinks he has found a way to improve our chances in the coming battle. Elena took the tablet and read the technical summary. Most of it was beyond her understanding, but the conclusion was clear. The human ships would fight as a single coordinated unit, sharing information and tactics in ways that had never been tried before. It was risky. The technology was untested. If something went wrong, they could lose all their ships instead of just some of them. But it was also their best hope. Send my authorization, Elena said. Tell them to try anything that might work. High above the planet, long-range sensors detected new gravitational disturbances. The hegemony fleets were getting closer. Soon, the most important battle in human history would begin. But this time, humanity was ready. The Prometheus and its escort vessels waited in formation, their hybrid technology humming with deadly potential. The crews had trained together for weeks, learning to fight as a single unit. And deep in the prototype battleship's electronic mind, an artificial intelligence that was part human and part alien calculated strategies and